Hi, Wolfpack fans. Marcy Bullock here with Emotional Intelligence Part 1. One of the studies that I like to quote is, "What makes a graduate of a university successful?" Some people think that the correlation is to their intellectual abilities, their GPA and their test scores, what we call IQ. But actually, studies show that the ability to carry on a conversation with another person predicts the highest level of success. Talking to the Uber driver, talking to the chancellor, think about it. That's your ability to relate to other people, to see things from their viewpoint. And that's what we call EI, emotional intelligence, or sometimes EQ, emotional quotient. So what to expect today is we're going to give you some actionable items to help you improve your emotional intelligence, define it like we just did, and help you understand how to better communicate. So when you transition to the workforce, you can be successful and have opportunities to get promoted. So in a nutshell, emotional intelligence is why we react the way that we do. It affects every decision and every relationship in our personal and professional life. Interesting too that high performers have high EQ. So I like looking at this slide to see that 90% of top employers have a high EQ. That makes sense, doesn't it? People who are high performers can relate well to other people. Emotional intelligence is also responsible for 58% of your job performance. You might think that you're learning all of this information while you're a college student, and this is going to help you succeed. And it's true, it is going to help you succeed. All the technical competencies that you have related to your course of study. But more than half you're going to be relating to with emotional intelligence. And a lot of this you can improve. It's not something that's set in stone from your childhood, like your personality. People with high emotional intelligence make $29,000 more annually than their low EI counterparts. So that means if you struggle with getting along with people, if you're just a pain in the rear, let's be real, you're not going to get promoted and have opportunities to advance. So we want to focus on our ability to recognize our emotions as well as the emotions of others. It's so easy to read that definition, but in real life, it's so challenging to actually put it into practice. Let's understand how powerful our emotional effect has and use this information to guide our thinking and behavior. Here's some great things about a high degree of emotional intelligence which you can develop and improve. You know what you're feeling, what your emotions mean, and you know how they affect other people. Signs of a high EQ or an EI mean you can handle criticism. You welcome it. You don't deny a problem or blame other people or make excuses. Signs of a high emotional intelligence mean you're open-minded, you listen well with 2 ears and 1 mouth, and when you make a mistake, you take responsibility. I always say, fess up when you mess up. And you have this mentality of wanting to be better, that you're a work in progress, that you're always growing, that you don't know everything. Now, if you have a low emotional intelligence, that means you're not self-aware, you can't see things from other people's point of view, and you're oblivious to your own emotions and those of others. And then you do the opposite of what I just said. You blame people, you lash out, and you don't have impulse control. There's a video linked here that you can Google called the marshmallow test. And you see children as young as age 5, if they are able to control their impulse by not eating a marshmallow in front of them, how that impacts the rest of their lives. So let's take a look at the brain. Emotional intelligence is a balance between the rational and emotional brain. So we've heard of being left-brained or right-brained. We want a balance in there so that we can, when something terrifying happens, we can handle it. That means it might trigger a release of adrenaline. We might feel our heart beating quickly, feel a little bit of sweat beating up, and our muscles tensing up when we're terrified. This is our fight or flight reaction. And when you think about it, back in the day where we were being chased by a tiger, these were daily life or death situations, meaning that we needed to have a response to a terrifying situation. But what is the saber-toothed tiger of today in our technical focused world? It's when our computer crashes. It's a late email from your boss. It's an enraged employee or coworker. It's feeling so upset when someone cuts you off on the freeway, or maybe rushing to class late, or feeling anxious about studying for a test. That's the fight or flight response today. So as we think about this, we want you to understand that if you know how to react and respond emotionally, this will help you so much. Look at the two pictures there and think about the emotions that are going on just by looking at the faces. Obviously, there is some anxiety happening here. Again, most likely to succeed is not the person screaming at their team, but it's the leader who stays in control and calmly assesses the situation. Dr. Daniel Goleman has helped popularize emotional intelligence 20 years ago, and he divided it up into 5 components that you see here. We're going to focus on a few of these in this webinar today. First of all, self-awareness. This is understanding and recognizing your own moods. We're all emotional creatures. We're going to have good days and bad days. I want you to think about self-awareness as it affects your confidence and realistically assessing yourself and having a sense of humor about your shortcomings. So with self-awareness, a couple of different strategies to use would be intentional about paying attention to you. Yeah, just what I said on here is realistic. Be realistic about your capabilities and understand your own shortcomings. Journaling is a fantastic way to be in touch with your emotions. Just a few minutes a day, writing down how you feel about situations. What are you thinking about, and how are your thoughts impacting your emotion? Also, slow down. When you are quick to anger or have a lot of strong emotions, ask yourself why. So really great tips here on self-awareness. Self-regulation is the ability to control or redirect disruptive impulses and moods. And it's the ability to think before you act. You don't stick your foot in your mouth. So that can show your trustworthiness and integrity and your openness to change. So here are your tips. Know your values. If you know your values and what's important to you, that can help you to be more accountable and admit your mistakes, and also to be calm and be aware of your reaction to challenging situations. So much of this is awareness. Next is your self-motivation. That is a passion to work for reasons that go beyond money or status and pursue goals with energy and persistence. A lot of strong drive to achieve and optimism even when you face failure. So a tip to improve self-motivation on your emotional intelligence scale is to find something good and be hopeful. If you are motivated, you're probably optimistic no matter what's thrown at you. And we're going to end part 1 of the video with empathy, which is the ability to understand the emotional makeup of the people around you and treat them according to their emotional reactions. So you could put yourself in the shoes of a boss, coworker, or family member. How do we improve our empathy? Just be aware of the definition and say to yourself, how can I look at this situation from the other person's point of view? Listen and ask what the other person would do. If I was in that situation, what would I do? Now stay tuned for part 2 of emotional intelligence on the next webinar. Hi, Wolfpack fans. I'm on part 2 of emotional intelligence. So it's really easy to listen to those definitions in part 1, but in reality, how hard is it to do it when all of the emotions start bubbling up? Because it's not just straightforward, right? Oh, I'm supposed to listen to how I'm feeling right now. I'm supposed to think before I talk, but I often mess up every day on this. So now I'm going to give you this quiz. I want you to read each one of these questions, and I want you to write down the answer that you think is correct. Let me make this a little bit bigger here so you can see it. So starting with number 1, you are on an airplane that suddenly hits bad turbulence and begins to rock from side to side. What do you do? So you are going to go ahead and just jot with a old-fashioned pen and paper what you think about the answer to that question. And I'm going to let you take a second to do that. And if you need more time, go ahead and pause. Number 2, you are in a meeting when a colleague takes credit for the work that you have done. What do you do? So take a pause and read those 4 and then move on to number 3. You are a customer service representative. I've just gotten an extremely angry client on the phone. What do you do? Take a pause and pick your answer because we're going to show you the real answers and give you a score on how you do on your emotional intelligence. So there's going to be points assigned. You are a college student, you can relate to that, and you'd hope to get an A in the course that was important for your future career aspirations. You just found out you got a C minus on the midterm. What do you do? You are a manager in an organization that is trying to encourage respect for racial and ethnic diversity. You overhear someone telling a racist joke. What do you do? Number 6, you are an insurance salesperson calling on prospective clients and you have left the last 15 clients empty-handed. What do you do? Number 7, you are trying to calm down a colleague who has worked herself into a fury because the driver of another car has dangerously cut close in front of her. What do you do? Number 8, a discussion between you and your partner has escalated into a shouting match. You are both very upset and in the heat of the argument start making personal attacks which neither of you really mean. What is the best thing to do? Number 9, you've been given the task of managing a team that has been unable to move forward and come up with a creative solution to a work problem. What is the first thing you do? And lastly, you have recently been assigned a young manager on your team and have noticed that he appears to be unable to make the simplest decisions without seeking advice from you. What do you do? Now, this is the real life situation where the rubber meets the road. So we're going to go back to the PowerPoint now, and we're going to give you the answers and see how you scored on this quiz. And you're going to actually see the results. And so when we look at the results, 100 is the top score, and that means that you are in the maximum area. If you hit 50 on this, you got average, and 25 or below is the minimum score. All right, so we got to go back up now to the part of our PowerPoint where we are looking specifically at what we did in part 1. Now these are all the questions. So let's take a look one by one at your answers. First was the airplane. All right, here are your points. You've got 10 if you continue to read your book, 10 if you are vigilant for an emergency, 10 if you do a little of each, and you get 0 for D. Next up was the credit stealing colleague. So you can see here the points that you would get. The most emotionally intelligent answer is D. By demonstrating an awareness of workplace dynamics and ability to control your emotions, publicly recognizing your own accomplishments is as in a non-threatening manner will disarm your colleague as well as put you in a better light with your manager and peers. Public confrontations can be ineffective and are likely to cause your colleague to become defensive and may look like poor sportsmanship on your part. Although less threatening, private confrontations are also less effective in that they will not help your personal reputation. Number 2, the answer is D. How'd you do on that one? Empathizing with the customer will help calm him down and focus back on the solution. And that will ultimately help the customer attain his needs. Confronting the customer will become more defensive and tends to anger the customer. Now your points for 4, the midterm. So A is an indicator of self-motivation, also known as an achievement motivation. We define that in part 1. It is your ability to form a plan of overcoming obstacles to achieve long-term goals. While focusing efforts on class, where you have a better opportunity may sometimes be productive if the goal was to learn the content of the course to help your long-term career objectives, you are unlikely to achieve. The racist joke. The most effective answer is C. You must create an atmosphere that welcomes diversity, and it is to be clear in public and that the social norms of your organization do not tolerate such expressions. Confronting the behavior privately lets the individual know the behavior is unacceptable, but it does not communicate it to the team. Instead of trying to change prejudices, as harder task that is, keep people from acting on them. So we've got C, speak up on the spot, saying that such jokes are inappropriate and will not be tolerated in this organization. Now we're on to the setback of the salesman. So the setback here is B, optimism and taking initiative are both indicators of emotional intelligence. Lead people to see setbacks as challenges they can learn from, and to persist trying out new approaches rather than giving up, blaming, or getting demoralized. So our appropriate answer on the setback. Next is the road rage. D is all research shows that anger and rage seriously affect one's ability to perform effectively. Your ability to avoid or control this emotional reaction in yourself and others is likely an indicator of emotional intelligence. Next is the shouting match. We have A. In these circumstances, the most appropriate behavior is to take a 20-minute break. As the argument has intensified so that the psychological response in your nervous system to the point at which it will take at least 20 minutes to clear your body of these emotions of anger. Any other course of action is likely merely to agitate an already tense situation. Next is the uninspired team. The answer is B. As a leader of a group of individuals charged with developing a creative solution, your success will depend on the climate that you can create in your project team. Creativity is likely to be stifled by structure and formality. Instead, creative groups perform at their peak when rapport, harmony, and comfort levels are most high. In these circumstances, people are most likely to take the project with a positive contribution to the success of the team. And then finally, 10, the indecisive young manager. D is the correct answer. Managing others requires high levels of emotional intelligence, particularly if you are going to be successful in maximizing the performance of your team. Often, this means that you need to tailor your approach to meet the specific needs of the individual and to provide them with support and feedback to help them grow with confidence. Here is the scoring system. And here are the final points today. Why it's important to know your emotional intelligence is to be a strong leader that has direct impact. And we would like to encourage you to ask questions when we have one-on-one conversations to be in person again.